Hey all you cool cats and kittens, it's Bobby here. Today we're rocking a Carol Baskin look because we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Dawn Lewis. So, to start us off, I'm going to be telling you a wee bit about Dawn and Carol, and then I'll go into about how they met and get into it for there. So, let's go. So, Jack Donald Lewis was born on the 30th of April 1938 in Dade City in Florida. And I really couldn't find much in the way of information about Jack, or Don, sorry, through his life. I came across that he was a self-made millionaire by the age of 43, and this was due to selling real estate, and also he owned businesses that were like selling used cars. So at this time, in 1981, he was married to his first wife, who was Gladys Lewis, and they had 3 daughters and 1 adopted son. Carol Baskin was born Carol Stairs Jones on the 6th of June in 1961, making her 51 years old today. And she was born in Lakeland, San Antonio, in Texas. Now, Carol was always interested in saving cats, and she showed this from a young age. I think it was about 9 years old. And she wanted to be a veterinarian until she found out that part of the job is putting animals down, which I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's not something that I would be able to do personally. So that kind of put her off becoming a veterinarian. Again, there's not much coverage into what she'd really done in her life, for what I could find. However, I did find that at the age of 17, she was working in a department store, and she done this so that she could keep money coming in, obviously. And she also, round about this time, began breeding show cats and rescuing bobcats, which is nice. So, at this time when she was rescuing bobcats, she also used llamas as a lawn cutting service, or grass cutting, which is actually pretty cool, if I do say so myself. I kind of like that idea, it's quite cool. She was married to Michael Murdoch, and she married him when she was 17 on April 7th, 1979. Now, Michael Murdoch was her boss at the department store in which she worked. And Carol did say she didn't love Michael and that she only really married him because her parents were like disappointed that she was living with him out with of marriage. And together, Michael and Carol had 1 daughter called Jamie Murdoch. So Carol and Dawn, they met in 1981 when Carol was 19, and she said she threw a potato at Michael Murdoch because she says that he was becoming aggressive. So she flung a potato at him, which is hilarious, and she ran out the house barefoot. And when she was running out the house barefoot, on a street called Nebraska Avenue in Tampa, Florida, is where she first met Dawn Lewis. So this meet between Carol and Dawn, it led to an affair that lasted a whopping 10 years, while he was still with Gladys and Carol was still with Michael. So, they had this affair and they stayed with their spouses until 1991. Might be noted during this time that Dawn had multiple girlfriends, even through like this time, even though he was seeing Carol, he was seeing other women as well. Poor Gladys, which just a shame for her. Carol helped Dawn substantially grow his wealth during 1984 by helping him sell like real estate. So in 1991, Carol and Dawn got married, when they left their other halves, being Michael and Gladys. So they left them and they got together and got married. And together they co-founded Wildlife on Easy Street, which is now called Big Cat Rescue. The pair clashed on how they wanted to run this business, however, which caused some problems in their marriage. So Don wanted to use the business to breed the animals and like make money off it, and Carol wanted to keep the business as a charity. Carol says that Don was obsessed with sex, which kind of makes sense given all the affairs that he was having during his marriage to Gladys. And it was rumoured that he was having affairs as well when he was with Carol. So she says Don was obsessed with sex, and he used to constantly, when she was on her period, this is when he would take trips to Costa Rica, and it was said that he was going there. He did have business out there, but it's suspected that he was also having affairs on Carol's end when he was over there, because he was just so sex obsessed that he couldn't even go a week without having sex. He had to like hop on a plane and fly out to Costa Rica, which is just like, what the heck, man, come on. But he of course would have been like, oh well, it's just business, Carol. So Don told family and friends that he was eventually planning to move to Costa Rica, and in early 1997, he did begin moving ownership of some of his companies from Florida, like his properties and stuff, and he changed them into the name of a company that he owned in Costa Rica. In the days leading up to Don's disappearance, Don bought a plane ticket to Costa Rica, and he was also loading things into a truck that was destined for Miami. Lewis had been speaking to people prior to his disappearance. He'd been talking to people, friends and stuff, about pulling something off. Nobody knows exactly what this was, but he'd also been talking to people about divorcing Carol. So in July 1997, Don filed for a restraining order against Carol and said that the reason for this restraining order was because of the fact she had threatened his life on multiple occasions. Now, he went down to the courthouse, filed all this stuff, like saying that she had threatened his life, that she had hidden his gun so that he couldn't protect himself if she did decide to try and kill him. And his family, this is important, like his daughters and his ex-wife, said that he did not involve the police and things. So for him to go to this courthouse and try to get this restraining order was apparently huge. So this restraining order was rejected, and he did continue living with Carol after the fact it was rejected, which, I mean, how scared are you for your life if you're still living with this person who's threatening you? Do you know what I mean? But that's just my personal opinion. So Carol says, when asked about this restraining order, that Don had filed this restraining order because when he was in Costa Rica, she had sold some of his property that she considered to be junk. Now, I'm assuming that Carol probably done this because she thinks her husband's having an affair, you know what I mean? So she's probably a bit annoyed. But I don't know. Carol says that in the time leading up to Don's disappearance, that his mental state was deteriorating, that his short-term memory was dwindling, and that he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which I don't know if he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. This is just what Carol's saying. I'm pretty sure that there is a thing in America when someone goes missing or whatever, you can't actually access their medical records. So I think it just is kind of like her word. So on the 18th of August 1997, Don Lewis disappears. And he had apparently been heading to Costa Rica and his van was found a few days later at a private airport. Now, this airport was unmanned, which means basically that, you know, when you go to a normal airport, there's people there and they're like doing their job and looking after things and stuff like that. Sorry if you're seeing my mirror, it's just so that I can put my face mask on. So this airport was unmanned. So I think that basically is mentioned because it means that nobody can really say he came in and he did get on a plane or somebody flew him or whatever, or he flew himself, because he did have a piloting license, but it was suspended. So nobody knows. Nobody knows for a fact if he did come through this airport. And his van was found and the keys were on the floor, which that's a bit strange, isn't it? Like, the keys are just on the floor. He didn't take them with him for when he comes back to drive home. So police searched the van and they couldn't see anything weird apart from the fact that the van was there and the keys were there. So this leads some people to suspect that somebody else put the van there and just left the keys on the floor. So Carol reported Dawn missing the next day when she hadn't heard from him, and the police searched the 40 acres of land that was wildlife on Easy Street, which is now Big Cat Rescue, and they couldn't find anything there. And they cleared Carol of any suspicions. They also carried out a search in Costa Rica, because Dawn had a lot of land over there as well, 200 acres of land over there, and they couldn't find anything there either. The only thing that the police did find in Costa Rica was that Don was having affairs and he was also wrapped up in some sketchy stuff. So it was like sketchy businesses and things like that. The investigation for there, I mean, it was a 5-day investigation in Costa Rica and they couldn't find any evidence that Don had been there. So basically after that, the investigation went cold. There was no witness, not witnesses, but there wasn't any suspects really. They just thought he up and left. I mean, he's a grown man. If he wants to up and leave, he can. Although, what is a bit weird is none of his credit cards have ever been used since he disappeared. Now, a lot of the time when we see that in cases where people have disappeared, it's not a good sign. So in 2002, 5 years after Dawn disappeared, Carol Baskin had Dawn declared legally dead. And so this meant that she then gained all his financial stuff, like land that he owned and properties and stuff like that. Only 10% of this, only 10% of over £5 million or dollars worth of estate, only 10% was left to his kids and I think his ex-wife. So there's been a lot of like lawsuits and stuff back and forward from them to Carol because they think that Carol has staged this. So I'll tell you why. The reason that they think this happened is because seemingly, allegedly, Carol had broken into an office of a lady. It was like Dawn's personal assistant, and Dawn's will went missing, and suddenly Carol had this will. Like, she was like, oh, I turned up with this will and gave it to the lawyer, and the lawyer says in his 37 years of doing this, he had never seen a will that was so sketchy. Like, so on it says in the event of his death or disappearance, which, I mean, everybody knows they're going to die, but who thinks about that? Like, oh, in case I disappeared, do you know what I mean? Like, it could be argued that Don knew he was into some sketchy business in Costa Rica, but I just don't think you would anticipate disappearing, would you? So basically, they got 10% of that, and Carol inherited everything else. So she had a lot to gain, which obviously makes her seem a bit suspicious. One of Dawn's daughters said in an interview that she believes that Carol had killed her father, cut him up into bits and put him through the meat grinder and fed him to the animals on the acres of Big Cat Rescue. And this theory seemed to gain traction, especially among people like Joe Exotic. So in 2020, Corona hits, the world is in the house and we're watching Netflix, and they release Tiger King. And if you haven't seen Tiger King, well, you should go watch it. You really should. It's so good. I mean, I have to say, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's so weird, and I just definitely think everybody should watch it. So Tiger King launches on Netflix, and the world is just like sucked in. And this causes a lot of interest to be sparked in Dawn's case because it's still unsolved, it's still open, and people are like, come on, this is weird. Joe Exotic's making songs about Carol killing her husband and feeding him to tigers, you know? Like, a lot of people started to be really interested and wonder, had anything else gone on with the case? So, this was brought up again, and Carol said that it was a ridiculous theory and that she couldn't even put his hand through a grinder, let alone his body. Now, to me personally, that statement does not help your case. It's a bit specific, isn't it? Like, couldn't even put his hand through a grinder, let alone his body. You know what I mean? So, let's get into the theories then. So the theory is, on people that believe Joe Exotic and Carol's Dawn's daughter, that she did in fact feed him to the tigers. Carol made statements about, you're going to want to feed somebody to tigers with something like some sort of substance on them, such as sardine oil, something that the tigers are going to like. Again, just like the theory of not being able to put his hand through the grinder, let alone his body, that seems oddly specific. So, of course, people were like, Carol, what are you hiding? Do you know what I mean? So that's one theory. But Carol did say it was ridiculous and that she never done it. She always just sticks to her story. She never done anything. She doesn't know what happened to Dawn. So another theory is that Carol killed Dawn and hid him in a septic tank on the grounds of Big Cat Rescue. Now, I mean, there's 40 acres of land, okay? And it was a couple of days investigation by the police. I don't know how you're searching 40 acres in like 2 days, 3 days maybe. That is a lot. And especially places like septic tanks, you're not going to think to check there, are you? No, straight away if you're not suspecting the person anyway. So, with that theory of the septic tank, and Dawn's lawyer recently came out and said that he had heard that Dawn was involved in some sketchy business in Costa Rica, which I don't know, like, we do know that is public information that the police found out. So it's kind of like, do you believe that, or did he just see that somewhere and come out with that, you know, for his 5 minutes of fame? But he had heard that, and I mean, I don't really know what this guy's got to gain for saying this and it not being true, but he'd heard he was involved in some sketchy business and that he was taken onto a plane, and I don't know if he was killed on the plane or whatever, but it was said that he was thrown out of the plane above the Gulf of Mexico into the ocean. And to be honest with you, that seems quite believable. Like, especially if you're involved in some crazy stuff and you get involved with the wrong people, it's definitely a possibility. However, I have seen that they've tried to test this and that it would have been really difficult to carry it out with the plane door being closed. But then again, my thought is, like, what if it wasn't a plane? What if it was like a helicopter? Or do you know what I mean? Like, it could be more possible than they're making out. But yeah, so Carol Baskin remarried. I believe it was in 2004. I'm not going to be including much about her marriage to Howard because I don't really think it's very relevant. to this video because we're talking about Dawn, not about her new husband. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. And if you've seen Tiger King, you'll need to let me know what you think. Personally, I'm glad that the investigation isn't closed and that they're they're looking into it a bit more. I am hoping that something comes of it because Don deserves family, deserves justice, and his family does as well. It'll be interesting to see if anything does come of it in the future. I know that a lot of people root for Carol and say that she's innocent, she's been through enough. And then there's the other side that say, nope, she's definitely guilty. And personally, I don't really know what I believe. I just think it's a bit weird how somebody who's planning on divorcing their wife and trying to get restraining orders suddenly goes missing. But the thing that really makes it hard for me to believe that he's still alive and that nothing has happened to him is that he hasn't used his credit card since he disappeared. It's just crazy, like, and even if he did, now he's got nothing because it all went to Carol and his family. So tell me what you think, guys. Let me know what you think happened. Do you think that Carol did it? Do you think that she didn't? Do you think he was just like, nah, I've had enough and totally go off the radar? I mean, he's got a lot of money. It's possible to be done. But then it's like, why would he not be in touch with his kids, you know? Unless he is and they're just pretending that he's not. But I think in this day and age with technology, it's really hard to like delete yourself off the face of the earth. So that's it for today. It was a bit a lighter one because obviously the last one I covered was quite heavy. And I thought, yes, let's do some Tiger King. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. And leave me a wee like, give us a wee comment what you think, if Carol did or didn't do it. And have a great rest of your day. Bye, guys.